During the Civil Rights Movement, Martin Luther King Jr. was quoted as famously saying that 11 a.m. on Sunday mornings was the most segregated hour of American life. Roughly 60 years later, King's statement continues to ring true in many cases, and yet something recently took place in our city of Memphis, a city that has been rife with racial tension through the years, that demonstrates how God's love is more powerful than racial division. Hi, and welcome to Mid-South Viewpoint here on the Bott Radio Network. I'm Byron Tyler, and I'm really looking forward to this program today as we welcome the pastor of Egypt Baptist Church and also, well, I guess now the associate pastor of Egypt Baptist Church, what was a white congregation, Egypt Baptist Church of Raleigh, and chief cornerstone church of Frayser, an African-American congregation. They have merged and become one church. We're looking forward to unfolding, guys, the story. Preston, Steve Jacobson, and Preston Poindexter, my dear brothers, longtime friends. I mean, I can just think of history when in this room here. I want to start off with you, Preston, because the church at Chief Cornerstone, prior to being Chief Cornerstone, was Northview Baptist Church.
Northview Baptist Church.
And Tom Purtle was the pastor there. I was 16 years old, invited to that church on a Wednesday night in December of 1978. And it was at that church in the office, which was your office for many years, I got on my knees and asked Jesus Christ to be my Lord and Savior. And I never will forget that. Steve, I don't know if you realize it or not, but Chief Cornerstone, which at that time, as I mentioned, was under another name, was where I got saved.
It is truly a small world.
It really is, isn't it? And then we go back. I mean, your roots are tied right here to WCRB Radio. You were in seminary. God had called you into ministry out of a great career in TV broadcasting.
I don't know how great it was, but it was a lot of fun.
I mean, you were one of my favorite reporters to watch on the news and bringing those stories, but God started working in your heart and called you to be a pastor. You're preparing for seminary at Mid-America Baptist Theological Seminary. Needed a job. Were able to help us in some great ways during those days. And so
very enjoyable days.
We had some good memories.
Yes,
all of us have some good memories together. But here we are now. We're going to tell this merger story with both you guys. Both churches voted unanimously in favor of the merger during a joint business meeting in October of last year. The two churches officially consolidated and held their first service together on December the 17th of 2023. Steve, you continue to hold the role as the lead pastor. And, of course, Preston, you have decided to be the associate pastor. And we're going to talk about that, first of all. How do we start this thing off? Why don't we talk about your congregation? Where have you been through the years? Tell me about Chief Cornerstone, Preston, when you became the pastor. I know originally it was a church plant from Bellevue Baptist Church, and then you were basically given the reins, and the church became independently on its own and doing ministry in the Frayser community. So kind of give us updates on how the ministry has evolved over the years.
Well, we started off as a church plant of Bellevue Baptist Church under Adrian Rogers, and what we did was we got into a covenant agreement with them. Strange happening. We were in the Frayser area, north part of town, walking the streets, and I see some guys from Bellevue there. They braggingly tell me they get paid to share the gospel, which I thought was phenomenal because I had to take off from work to do it. And so when I looked at these guys, and I thought, here you are in the north part of town, and Bellevue's in the east part of town. And I thought to myself, and I said it out loud without thinking, that you guys, what you're doing is wrong. And they looked at me funny because I knew that they were not going to take the people in that area back to Bellevue. It's too far. I later found out from old friend Phil Weatherwax, who was with Bellevue at the time, that Adrian Rogers had charged him with the thought that he should go out in areas where they can't reasonably expect people to walk through the doors of Bellevue. And in doing so, it presented a problem with him, which was opposite of mine. I'm out here by myself trying to share the gospel, and you guys, and I'm trying to start a church. And you guys are in the same neighborhood, same community, sharing the gospel, and you have no place to send them. And I'm thinking to myself, this is where it would be a great partnership. I'll pastor them and disciple them if you will just send them my way. And so Phil and I talked, and when we found out how much we had in common, We met at the Black Eyed Pea and found out that I was an answer to his prayer and vice versa.
Wow.
And so we set out on an adventure to do things in Bellevue, caught hold to it, and eventually started a church, a ministry in Frayser off of Thomas Street, and with the thought of after the church grew to a certain size that we would eventually start an autonomous Southern Baptist churches, which is what we did with Chief Cornerstone Church. And so in the process of being there, we set out to start the ministry in 2005. And but we had a lot of experiences and things that happened over that period of time. I mean, I don't know how far back you want me to go.
I know that God just blessed in so many ways.
Yes.
Steve, were you familiar with the ministry at that time?
Well, Preston and I got to know each other when I was pastor at Frayser Baptist Church. Phil Weatherwax and I were old friends. I tell people we played basketball together when we were members at Bellevue, but we were in different classes, so we played in teams against each other. I'm 5'10". Phil's about 6'4" or 5,
Yeah.
and my coach would stick me in and say, "You guard Weatherwax," and of course I'm the kind of ball player that if the coach said run through the brick wall, I said, "Where do you want the hole?"
Yeah.
And so I'd go out there and I tell people I still have T-shirts to this day with the footprints on them where Phil ran over me on the way to the basket. But Preston's ministry center there in Northgate Shopping Center came to my attention. Phil said they're outgrowing the facilities. And we had a 600-seat auditorium that we were not using. We were back in the old, smaller chapel because the church had been in decline for some years. And so I got together with Phil and with Preston to find a way to where we could bring Bellevue's church into our facility and have Bellevue take over responsibility for the upkeep and maintenance, because it was going to get very difficult for us as a declining church to do that.
Right.
And for whatever reason, it just seemed like everything was falling into place, and for whatever reason, God just shut that door. And we both went our ways, didn't see each other, but we remained friends. And when I came to Egypt Baptist Church, and Brother Kevin Farrell retired, the church called me as pastor. And one day one of our ladies said, "Do you know Preston Poindexter?" And I said, "You better believe I know him." And turns out that he had come over occasionally on Wednesday night and brought some of his folks with him and done Bible studies. And I said, well, let's encourage that and see if we can get that started again.
Yes.
And, of course, that led to us sitting down and having a conversation about merging the churches, because I have felt for a long time, back from the days when I was pastor at Frayser, that we live in a city, and you've mentioned it, that is so racially divided. I jokingly say the city council can't vote to go to lunch without the vote being along racial lines.
Yes.
And here we are in the middle of at this point, mostly African-American community, and we're a white church. And I thought to myself, if we really want people to believe that the gospel is real, we've got to show them that we're not that we're colorblind. We come together, especially in the Mid-South Association, and we have black churches and white churches come together for evangelistic rallies and outreaches and things like that. But then they go back to being black and white churches. And I said, somewhere along the line, a church has got to demonstrate that the only race that the Bible talks about is the one that we're supposed to run for the Lord.
That's right.
And so that led to all of this.
And I know, Preston, God, as you mentioned, has given you at Chief Cornerstone congregation there a fruitful ministry through many years, and impacting lives and seeing life change in the Frayser community and beyond too in our city. Things have changed, the neighborhood's changed, and the church was being vandalized at times, I believe.
Absolutely. And we had some many prosperous years, and I had become so bonded and connected to the Frayser community. There were so many things happening, but seemingly looked like to be right before COVID had hit, and during the time of COVID, everything just kind of bottomed out. I'll put it like that. Mm-hmm. And I look back now and wonder if God was at that time kind of stirring the nest for us, saying that it's time to go. And but because of my personal bonds, it was kind of hard to hear it. And so about mid-June or so of last year, we had someone that came in the church. It was a very strange thing that happened. And they vandalized the education building, the top and floor, second floor. I mean, took nothing, absolutely nothing. but they turned over bookshelves and destroyed pictures on the walls, and just went through the top and bottom floor. They got into the main building, and they put fire extinguisher all over the walls and on the floors. But something happened. I can't tell you what really happened, but by the time they got to the sanctuary, they did no damage whatsoever. That and the fellowship hall, which was kind of confounding to me. But and the only reason I knew that Sunday that I went in that there was a problem was I saw 3 microphones out of place where they just moved microphones and for some reason made a quick exit. And so got with the congregation, we talked about it, and we kind of boo-hooed a little bit, and then finally determined within ourselves that we've got to do something. It's time to move. Not sure what to do or how to do it, but we knew it was time to go.
Yeah.
And so, it was amazing at how things pieced itself together, because one of the things we were looking at was moving the ministry to another area. But I'm thinking, I got a lot of people out here in the Frayser and Raleigh area, and I'm not sure what to do, and will they follow us to some other part of town? And so when Steve called me and he made the offer of the merger, I knew it was God sent at that time, because it answered a ton of questions.
In addition, Preston, too, of you being pastor at Chief Cornerstone, there's other ministries that you've been involved with.
Yes.
And that really has led to you becoming the associate pastor to free you up. What are some of those other ministries? Could you share something?
Well, I was employed at the jail. It was my lifeblood, because I tell people that there is a church that's at 201 Poplar. And I saw an average of about 150 people a month get saved. And this had went on for about 4 years. And but I'm trying to figure out how do I tie what's happening with the jail with Chief Cornerstone Church. Getting them out of jail and getting them into the church was a problem. And there's still some missing pieces to the puzzle. And so one of the things that before the merger took place was that God had laid it on my heart quite a while ago to put together a discipleship center. And that's basically a teaching place where everybody from the pastor down to the new member can come in a weekday and just get further taught into the things of Christ, and basically pushing them towards making disciples.
Yes.
And so we're looking at the possibility at this time of putting, I call it now, is in my head, the Collierville Discipleship Center, whereas we will have a retreat place for pastors, we'll have a place for even the people who are seeking second chances within the city. There are a lot of second chance programs in the city, but none of them, very few of them, if any of them, deal with the spiritual growth of the person.
Right.
Because most of them are funded by outside entities other than church.
Yes.
And so we're trying to put together something that's going to bring that together. And so tying them in with Egypt Baptist Church and keeping those contacts with the jail and still ministering in the jail, as well as doing outreach out in the Collierville area.
Steve, a winning combination, it sounds like.
It really was. It's amazing. And Preston and I were talking about it. It was 25 years ago when God first planted the seed in our hearts of coming together in ministry. And, a lot of times we feel God leading us, and if he doesn't open a door in 6 months or 7 months, we think maybe we've missed God's plan. We're talking 25 years.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it all falls into place, and you say, God, you knew what you were doing.
His timing's perfect.
It is always.
How would you, Steve, categorize your church prior to this merger? Strong, stable, stuck, or struggling?
Well, I think a combination of those things. Certainly, it was stable in where we were as a congregation, but it was struggling, and it was in decline. At the time of the merger, we were probably running about 20, 25 on a good Sunday, and that's down. Over the years, it's declined. And I've been in some declining churches before as pastor, and I've seen it, and it's not fun for the church, and it's not fun for the pastor, and a lot of times. Churches can't make the kind of changes that they need to make in order to bring in new life and revitalize the church. Mm. And, this was just an act of God, because our folks at Egypt Baptist Church embraced this enthusiastically. And so it made it just very easy for our two churches to come together.
Well, I was wondering, about some of those because you can easily have conflict, and you want it obviously to avoid that. You don't want to see that happen. People can be people, but thankfully, I don't think there's been any real major conflicts or issues through this merger, right, Preston?
Well, no, at least I haven't seen any. The thing is that I think it's because both congregations really want to make this work.
Yeah.
And we're enthusiastic about the probabilities and the things that God has in store. I just know there's something exciting in the air. And
yes.
I know that I'm 67 years old. I'm thinking, God, are you asking me to start all over again? And but there's something that's happening in the Raleigh area that God's hand is truly on.
And we haven't given Steve's age away yet.
Well, you take his 67 and reverse the numbers, and that's where I am.
What are some of the positive things that you both have seen take place so far, even in this early transition joining the two churches?
Well, I can tell you from my own experience, I really believe that Brother Preston is a real man of vision, and he's brought some ideas to us. He's bringing Egypt Baptist Church into the 21st century as far as, our music program is upgraded because he's got some wonderful musicians. Dedrick Howard is a great keyboard player and just does a wonderful job. And they're bringing in some money from the sale of their property that's going to give us video options for the music and everything, things that we've never had the money or the expertise to be able to do. So it's going to transform both of these churches as they continue to develop.
I was wondering about the worship style. I mean, there's a little bit different culture, right? I mean, how is that blended together?
We are being patient with each other. I'll put it like that.
Long-suffering,
right?
Which the Bible tells us, right?
And as I've said before, if churches can't come together because they have a very different worship style, that's one thing. But if they don't come together because we don't want to worship with them or they don't want to worship with us, that's a problem.
Yep.
And I said, the gospel, we've got to demonstrate to this world that the gospel unites people. Back in the days of the apostles, it was Jew and Gentile.
Yep.
Today it's racial, and we need to put a stop to that. We need to show that the gospel really does unite us.
Absolutely.
Well,
absolutely.
That's so good.
We are. I'm encouraged because my mind is towards the filling of the pews and the people coming from the outside, and what we're going to present to them when they walk through the doors. And so I want to make sure that we have something inside the building that is godly and at the same time appealing to families. And when people come in, they want to stay and become part of it.
That's so important. The majority of mergers usually involve a name change. And so, but now Chief Cornerstone has been totally dissolved. The building was sold. But was there any discussion about changing the name of the church or using Chief Cornerstone as the name?
Well, Egypt Baptist Church has been around over 200 years. And one thing our people were adamant about was we do not want to lose our identity and our history. And that was thankfully not a problem. Chief Cornerstone said, no, we understand that. And so we've all come together as Egypt Baptist Church. But I'll tell you, I've seen God just in the last month do some things in our church that I've never seen before. We were having our Wednesday night meal and Bible study, and a lady walks in just out of the blue and says, I want to join this church. I said, I've never had that happen on a Sunday morning, much less a Wednesday night. But she'd been driving by the church for some time, lived out in Millington, and God had just put it on her heart. It was time to get back into church, and lo and behold, she shows up. Sunday morning, we had two young men come in, and first time we'd ever seen them. One of the young men had a Bible that one of our ladies had presented to him in 2002.
Wow.
Still had it inscribed. She didn't even remember him. Of course, he was much younger when she did that. She looked at the Bible. She said, that's my handwriting. It's just amazing what God is beginning to do in Egypt Baptist Church.
Oh, my. What are some keys of merging churches that each of you have learned so far and that you would maybe pass on to other pastors considering a church merger, Preston?
Well, one of the things that I would say is that when you got people who are in line with what you see, and on top of that, there's a genuine love and concern for each other, that people are ready to make commitment as well as to be more flexible as far as the way they vision or have been taught church to be. And I see a lot of people that are working real hard just to be part of it. And so it's really got me excited. I'll tell you that And I appreciate our pastor here because I think that his role right now it's really essential as far as the leadership and what people see.
Yeah.
And I want people to see how, when they come through the doors, that we can mingle, we can be part of each other, and race is not an issue.
That's right.
Well, how about for you, Steve? What are some lessons and keys you learned?
Well, I grew up in New Jersey in a very unemotional church, Christian Missionary Alliance Church. I tell our folks that if somebody said amen during the sermon, everybody thought maybe a Pentecostal had come in. And I discovered a whole new style of worship when I came down to the South and got to know the churches that I was involved in. I think one of the keys, obviously, is finding a church whose worship style is close to yours. If you've got a very laid-back, very, very subdued congregation, you're probably not going to be able to pull off a merger with a church that is very emotional and outspoken and constantly, raising hands. But find a church that is close to yours in style of worship and the way they worship. That will maintain a comfort level.
Yeah.
And you're going to have that comfort level as people get to know each other.
Obviously, doctrinally, you guys are on the same page, right? Mm-hmm. There was no really issues you had to deal with or get into a conversation about, because foundationally it is the gospel that you both are preaching. I just love this, and I love too, because I can see when we get older in life, it's easy to get set in our ways. Like for the years you mentioned you're 67, Steve 76, and it's easy to say, this is the way I've been doing it. God has blessed me all those years. Why should I change it? And I think this really just shows us how the body of Christ does need to be, as we even mentioned a moment ago, patient with one another. Long-suffering, These are things that we just don't see, Preston, in today's church or in our world today, as we need to love each other. It really boils down to loving one another.
Absolutely. We have a tendency sometimes to get trapped in our world. I'll put it like that. And we have a tendency to see things only through our eyes. But I think when we start trying to see things the way other people see it, we'll find out that we have a whole lot more in common than we do differences, and then we find out the differences that we have are not that important at all.
Yeah,
that's right.
And so I love where we are. There's nobody taking up weapons, nobody that I know of that's defensive at this point. Everybody's working hard to come together.
And I just love this picture too of how this was both planted in your hearts years prior to this actually taking place. And God does work in time, and we need to allow that to happen sometimes.
When we first sat down, when Preston and I met together for lunch and we talked about this, I said, look, we can co-pastor, because the last thing I wanted Preston to think was that I was trying to pull his people out from under him and, in order to grow my own church.
Yeah.
And Preston said, look, I've got a lot of other ministries that I'm involved in. I'll be quite happy to be your associate pastor. And so everything from start to finish has just fallen into place. There's not been a situation we've had disagreements or conflicts over. It's just been the most beautiful situation.
Well, plus there's an arm of your ministry now together,
right,
that you're able to, like you say, the ministry at 201, which it sounds like it's thriving.
Right now I'm not there
because
of the way God is moving, giving 8 hours every day, actually, because I don't do 8 hours, given the hours that I have been dedicating to them, make it real tough to do Egypt as well as get the other ministry started.
Right.
So I pulled back from there to some degree, but keeping the relationships, because at some point they're gonna all blend together.
The late Ralph White, pastor of Bloomfield, Baptist Church.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming both of you know Ralph. He's on enjoying the presence of Christ now, and I love him. And he had the Hands Around 201. About this time of year, every year, we would talk about Hands Around 201. People coming together and praying for the criminal justice system, and praying for those inside, realizing that these are lives inside those jails that are broken people that need the gospel, need to be prayed for and shown love. So you see, Steve, you guys doing new community outreaches too?
Absolutely. One of the things Preston and I are both in agreement on, and I think our church is, that if you're going to reach your community, you've got to resemble your community. Egypt for many years was primarily an all-white church, and as the community has changed, it's hard to reach across racial lines to people who aren't part of the church.
Yes.
But we are now in a situation where no matter who visits our church, regardless of what their race is, they're going to find a comfort level and a comfort zone to where they're not going to feel like an outsider. And that's essential if you're going to bring new people in.
I was going to say also that when Northview Baptist Church was in the process of dissolving, I watched them. I cried with them. And I never will forget, I heard one of the members say the reason that she was so teared up was because she felt as if they had failed. And that hurt. But then I thought about over the years of what took place, and this is why it's so easy for me to merge with Egypt and to really to come in as an associate, because one thing I like I told Steve, that anything with two heads is a monster. When the neighborhood changed around them, they failed to respond to the neighborhood, and that either means you have to make the church look like the neighborhood, or you do what a lot of the other churches did, was to leave the area and go where you can minister. It's not necessarily racist. It's just a difference in culture.
Yes.
But if the culture looks like the neighborhood, you shouldn't have any problems reaching the neighborhood.
Amen.
So that's why it was no problem with getting with Egypt, because I see what we bring to the table, because the neighborhood is mixed. It is diverse in that area. And when they see us ministering side by side,
that's beautiful.
I really believe that God's hand is going to do some miraculous things.
Well, I think we think it's just a moving of the Holy Spirit working in the hearts of his people. And this, guys, is what an example that we need to see more of. And I just appreciate so much you coming and sharing the story. Now, I can't help but think there's somebody listening that wants to come fellowship with you and be part of the merger and what's taking place. When are the service times?
We have Bible study at 9:30, morning worship at 10:45, Wednesday night at 6.
And the church is located where?
4455 Raleigh Millington Road. If you're driving out toward Millington, when you cross Egypt Central Road, we're about maybe a half a mile, quarter of a mile on the right-hand side. Can't miss us.
Okay, I'm sure there's a website, Facebook page possibly?
Yeah,
or
there is. It hasn't been
We
up.
are in the process.
Yeah.
We are in the process of getting on.
Making that happen. Okay. Well, next time we'll share that information.
Absolutely.
God bless you guys.
In going to Mid-America, I used to love to go to Founders Days and hear Dr. Gray Allison tell the story, what he called the miracle of Mid-America. And I'm looking forward to the day when I'll be able to talk about the miracle of Egypt Baptist Church, because I believe it's coming.
Well, I think it's already here. I think we're seeing it now. I think we're seeing it right happen now, and it's just going to be unfolding in the great things that God has in store for the folks there. So God bless you. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you for having us.
Well, friends, that's all the time we have on this edition of Mid-South Viewpoint. My pleasure again to welcome Pastor Steve Jacobson and Pastor Preston Poindexter of Egypt Central Baptist Church in the Raleigh community, Raleigh Frayser community. God bless you. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.